All right. Welcome to the Huddle Review. You guys are here on the chain. Got a lot of things that we're going to talk about today. Going to give it a little moment. This is a live stream, so we'll get a little moment for people to start flooding in. In the meantime, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about banks. We're going to talk about the Federal Reserve. We're going to talk about cryptocurrency, digital asset, the digital dollar, digital currency in general, what's going on in the world. Before we really get into all of that, there are a few kind of side stories that I wanted to go over, and it's getting ready to start right now. Boom, look at that. We're back. We are back. We are live. This is awesome. So who do we have in the room so far? We have Chip. I don't know who that is. Never met him before, but he did get the alert. So that is a start. So Chip, big shout out to you for getting the alert. Joni, good to see you. Glad you made it in. Carl Lewis, Rod Hop, all the way from North Carolina. So it's good to see you on. It is always good to start seeing new faces popping in and chatting as we go through this discussion because there's going to be so much to talk about. There is absolutely a ton of things that have been happening over the past few weeks. Here we have Home Church Hanam. Mr. Bigman, Joni, all the way in from Florida. We have Parham Div. Awesome. Good to see you here. And we've got none other than WB bringing in some Chinese bamboo. So that is absolutely outstanding. So, again, what are we talking about today? We are going to get into the Federal Reserve. We're going to get into cryptocurrency. We're going to talk about, banks and how is this all being pulled together? What's going on in the global economy? This is the new global economy. So before we get into that, I was about to do a little sidestep into some interesting content I think is interesting and starts over in India because if you guys have followed over the past couple years, India has initially in the early years was starting to be a big player in the crypto space. We started to see a lot of interesting companies developing in the crypto space. And then the government and the Reserve Bank, the RBI, had some issues with cryptocurrency and virtually shut it down, claiming that it wasn't going to be a legit form of trade in India. However, at the exact same time, while they were crushing the crypto space, those within government over in India were promoting blockchain, and we've seen this kind of developing, over the past year and a half or so, where India has been developing more and more into the blockchain space, whereas they're not letting the people in India invest in or expand on the digital asset space. Now, to me, I believe that they go hand in hand. Yes, you can segment out the blockchain technology. However, if you leave out one of the most, important, I don't know if I want to call it a discovery, but let's call it a discovery. One of the most important discoveries, yeah, in the last who knows how many of years. And we're talking about a new asset class. So, and that new asset class is the digital currency, the cryptocurrency asset class. That if India leaves that off the table, you have 1.3 billion people over in India that are going to be missing out. Now, to that point, now the Indian, the Prime Minister of India has come out and he's backing blockchain technology. Now, what can blockchain technology do? Obviously, we've seen what it's doing all over the world, and we talked about this a little bit on previous shows on how important having having this technology, especially in parts of the developing world. We're not talking about just the developed world, the Western countries. We're talking about from a global perspective, how important is blockchain? How important is digital asset? It's extremely important. It is the new frontier. And this is exactly how the Prime Minister of India declares blockchain as a frontier technology. Now, it's interesting because when we look at the boom of the internet back in the 90s, where was the epicenter? The epicenter was primarily in the United States, primarily in Silicon Valley, primarily just in San Francisco as its epicenter. And now we're seeing, obviously over the years, we've seen a lot of transition globally to bringing more advancements in technology to the internet. But the epicenter has always been and still is in that Silicon Valley, mindset. We got to tear that out. We can't have the global technology with an epicenter in this tiny little space. And that's what's so amazing right now with the blockchain. That's what's so amazing with the digital currency, with the cryptocurrency, is that it's giving people all over the world an opportunity for self-fulfillment, an opportunity to develop, an opportunity to earn. And that is going to change, fundamentally, it changes everything. It changes the landscape. So one of the things that when we interviewed Alex Mashinsky, the CEO of Celsius, the last interview, not this past one of the things that he said was that those who basically were in control and the big titans of today are not necessarily and most likely won't be the same coming out of this. So right now, things are obviously a lot of things are in flux. But as we see this new development, as we see blockchain coming to the forefront, we see digital asset coming to the forefront, we're going to see a whole new group of people that are going to become the titans of industry, the titans of this industry. And it's not going to be the big bankers. It's not necessarily going to be the big Amazons of the world. We do see these people still trying to make a huge play. They have a big step ahead because they have billions of dollars to invest and buy and do whatever they have to do. They're not going to be going anywhere. However, we're going to be seeing the rise of many new players. And that is what's exciting. And we're seeing it as a global phenomenon. So, whether India decides that they're going to really, really take advantage of what's happening on the ground, not just from a technology perspective, not just developing the blockchain, but allowing the individuals within India, the citizens of India, to actually begin to invest in themselves, invest in the projects, invest in the digital asset. So one thing that India was very specific about is that they don't want the digital asset competing with the rupee. And I think that's been the problem all along over in India. So here we have even the Indian crypto outlet, this is Crypto Canoon, highlighted the importance of clarity in terms of regulations going forward, because just like in the US, they need regulatory clarity over in India as well. And so what we also see at the exact same moment as all this is going on, so when we talk about this new frontier from a global perspective, we're seeing that you have the potential, for India to rise to the forefront. At the same time, we have China that is fighting tooth and nail to really overcome and become that major superpower, taking on the U.S., trying to destabilize the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency. So we see China is really, taking a direct, approach. But while they're doing that, they're also trying to consolidate within their own digital currency, within their, kind of dominance in the blockchain space. But yet you have so much else going on in the world, whether it's going to be in Africa, whether it's in the United States, whether it's over in Europe, or whether it's in India. So we can't allow one nation to dominate, especially a communist nation. The developments over in China, where they're going to be more centralized and controlling, which they're trying to establish their region right now, and really put a footprint down on the control. And that's what's going to be interesting as India rises up. Also, almost equal in size in terms of population, yet open and embracing of democracy and development of their technology. So it's going to be interesting. So that was kind of like a side note to everything else that I wanted to talk about. But let me bounce over here. Let's see what we have going on here. We have um, WB India has been schizophrenic. Yeah. So let's see. Just going back up, 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 up. All right. What did I miss here? Here we go. So Mike Kegley, welcome. Good to see you here. Blockchain is a secure distributed computing architecture with vast use cases beyond cryptocurrency. Most people do not understand that. That is true, 100%. Mike, there's so much more going on in the space when it comes to technology. Carl Lewis, funny stuff. All right, so Mike, China is still actively buying U.S. debt to assist with destabilizing when the time to strike is right. Interesting. Yeah, there's so much going on. They can bring down the U.S. without launching a missile. It's going to be interesting. They do control, however, when you're leveraged, there's almost like a duality in that control. When you have a nation that lended and a nation that that holds your debt, and then you decide that you're going to absolve yourself of that debt, could destabilize it on a global scale. Be interesting. Who knows what's going to happen? So, all right, let's one other thing that I wanted to bring up before we get into the Fed. What's happening over the Fed? What's happening over with the banks? But this is also interesting. So when we think about the global phenomena, hang on, let me. I haven't had any coffee yet. If you guys drink coffee, and you like espresso, I've been going through different coffees. So went with the rifle company. Is it Black Rifle? Black Rifle, I think it's Black Rifle. That one is outstanding. They have a couple different ones. The one the coffee I had last was Murdered Out. Then you have Death Wish. Death Wish, one of the best coffees you can get. And then this one is Segfredo. Segfredo is more popular. You go over to Italy, go to Europe, you're going to see Segfredo a lot. In the U.S., not so much. But before, I was actually having a friend of mine bring in every time you come in, like once a month, I would get this like commercial cafe version of the Segfredo, and it's only available to people in coffee shops over there. And so he'd bring it over for me, and so I finally found some on Amazon. Only place I could find it. I'm sure if I kept looking elsewhere, it's in a red bag instead of the black bag, but it's still outstanding. That's what I'm drinking this morning. So give me an idea what kind of coffees you guys like. If there's anything unique, outstanding that you haven't had yet, or that you would recommend having, let us know in the chat. That'd be great. We like the coffee. We like the espresso. I don't drink drip coffee. Too weak. Don't like the flavor. Espresso, there's like a whole point of grinding the beans. I do the stovetop cooker, for the espresso, and it's just makes a big difference. So, all right, to the chat. Oh, I was getting ready to talk about something else here, but to the chat. Let's go back to the chat here. All right, let's go back. Okay, so here's what's another important point, and then I've started to see this more and more interesting. Even in outside of blockchain business, I'm starting to see more and more going on in Africa. And so over the years, I've seen a ton. When I was in grad school, I did a lot of research on what was going on over in Botswana and some of the natural resources throughout Africa. As I also did a ton of research into the growth, the economic growth of China. But here, what's interesting is that in Nigeria, and I've seen this. This is actually paid content, but it doesn't matter because it's the point of this article that I pulled up ended up being paid content, but it's really the purpose because there was another company over in Nigeria that was popping up recently, bringing development to Nigeria in the blockchain space, in the crypto space, opening up, banking and other options for them. And it's interesting, I talked about that company a few weeks ago, but here's another one. And the article here is career opportunities in blockchain if you live in Nigeria. And we're starting to see it's, years ago, if you thought about Nigeria, you thought about, a lot of the scams going on the internet. A lot of it came out of Nigeria. However, with the development of the economy over there, we're also starting to see, a lot of development in the blockchain space. And so we're starting to see a lot of tech developing over in Nigeria. And I think it's important, so as we start, again, really identifying, where are some of these growth sectors and what is, blockchain technology actually bringing to the world? What is the impact that it can have on the world from an economic perspective? And what does that do for the populace? And so obviously when people have opportunities to work, opportunities to make more money, and that's really, I think, would be the foundation of it, making more money. So if you go over to China, for instance, in some of these factories and some of their provinces, we know that they're paying their people basically nothing. They're paying them very, very little wages to work in the factories, and in many cases, the conditions are subpar. However, you also see a big developing economy in China. We saw a huge growth in the middle class and the wealthy class in China, as we're seeing in India, a huge growth of the middle class and wealthy class in India, whereas there's still a massive, size, amount of poverty in India. You have about 700 to 750 million people that are living in poverty. Then, you have about 200 or 300 million that are living middle class and about 300 million that are living in a wealthy class. So it's an interesting section. But when you have, a population basically the size of the U.S. that's all middle class, obviously different, ends of the spectrum, then all wealthy, almost a similar pie, and then twice the size of the U.S. that lives in poverty. It's amazing. But when you have technologies like this, whether it's whether it's going to be in Africa, India, China, but focusing into Africa, for instance, you're giving people an opportunity for self enrichment, to manage their self, to bank for the first time. So there's this term that gets thrown around a lot, called the unbanked, and the unbanked is something that actually does really exist, and the unbanked are those that in many of these countries, in developing countries, they might not have a bank in their town. They might have access to the internet. Maybe they have their phones. In many cases, phones are becoming more and more proliferous. However, banks are very difficult to get to, or they're too expensive to keep your money in, or the individuals live day to day, so they live on their fiat currency. But going into going into the banking environment for them becomes really difficult. If you can't get into the banking environment, you also can't develop your business. You can't build your business. You can't build your life. And so having this open opportunity right now through blockchain, through digital currency, is providing many people around the world this first opportunity to get into a banking environment. And that's where we're starting to see so much development in the space. But if it's the first time someone's now building, and they can earn, and they can, they can save, they can do whatever it is, they can send money. So we're seeing like the remittance payments, the cross-border payments for workers that are going to another country to work. But imagine how those workers could stay in their own country. They don't necessarily have to go to another country. Perfect example for those in the U.S. Look at our southern border in Mexico. The new USMCA, which is between the U.S., Mexico, and Canada, is amazing, right? Because it's establishing an economic bloc in the Americas. Eventually, that could expand down into South America. What does that have to do with digital currency? What does that have to do with the economy? It has everything to do with it. And so all of these pieces as they start getting put together, are really, really important for the overall growth in the space and for us to understand exactly, what's happening in the space. So we can't be, very, narrow focused, like Mike was saying before. Mike had pointed out, this space is about more than just the digital currency. Digital currency is one part of it. Blockchain is another big part of it. All of these trade arrangements are a big part of it. The cross-border remittance payments has been a big part of it. And now when we start looking at countries being able to become more self-sufficient, individuals within those countries becoming more self-sufficient, it becomes critical for the development of that country. Let's look at like Venezuela. I know kind of sidestepped off of banks and the Fed, but we'll get to it, I promise. If you look at like Venezuela, a once prosperous, self-sufficient nation, went the other way, and now it's an extremely dangerous place to be. It's definitely not a safe. It's not necessarily a safe place. And they're obviously having some. I just had my screen just went out, and I'm like, oh, what the heck just happened? Why did my screen go out? So Venezuela went from self-sufficiency to reliance on handouts. The people in Venezuela went from being able to have safety and security walking around their nation to not. They went the opposite way. And here we have countries that want to get to self-sufficiency. They want safety and security. They want to move in the other direction. They want to be able to utilize their resources. They want to utilize the resources for their own benefit. So you have, the kind of the old guard. And there was this book. I don't know. I don't know. I can't remember the name of the book and the author. It's kind of crazy. But one of the things that he said is you have to look at what your potential is in the industry today. So this book was written back at the turn of the century, talking about the turn of the 1900s. And he wrote this book. It was amazing because he's talking about, can you still get rich in today's society at the turn of the century? And they're talking about electric trains at the time. And he said, you could try to compete against the moguls that are in the steam engine. You can try that. You probably won't be successful. You can give it everything you've got and you might make your way there. But look at the new technology. Look at the electric train. It's wide open. If you want to succeed, anybody, put your stake in and develop in that space. So that'd be like right now trying to take on YouTube, for instance, and say, you know what, I'm going to take on YouTube. That's it. I'm going to build the best platform. Not only is it YouTube I'm trying to take on, I'm going to try to dominate over Google, or maybe I'm going to try to dominate over Amazon. You could try it. It's not, might not be the worst thing if you had this, huge amount of backing and you did something vastly, drastically different. Maybe you had government backing. Maybe you're like an Alibaba or something, but, that had been around for years. But then you can say, okay, here's the blockchain space. Here's something drastically new that I can do and build. I can do something different, and I can help, solve a problem and bring a real solution instead of trying to compete with the titans of the old. Similar to all these exchanges that are popping up, are the exchanges going to? And this is interesting. This is really interesting point. Because are the exchanges like Binance or BitTrue or U.S. exchanges like Coinbase or Uphold, are they going to continue to compete against these banks? Are they going to absorb the banks, or are the banks going to try to absorb them? And that's going to be interesting over the next year or two to see what direction it goes in, because now banks are allowed to custody digital assets. So there's the bank part. So we had 30 minutes of complete sidetrack talking about things from a global perspective and self-sufficiency, and the importance of that self-sufficiency, and the importance of people in Africa, Latin America, the U.S., India, China, whatever, being able to be self-reliant and self-sufficient, putting their money into crypto, putting their money into blockchain projects, allowing them to take advantage of and build in the blockchain space and build these blockchain projects, and then what's the next step? Obviously having, maybe a little bit of, regulatory clarity, whatever, all the other aspects of it. And that's where it's interesting, because right now, what's the one thing that's held back a lot of the development in the U.S.? Regulatory clarity. So hang on, let me just bounce up here real quick. I don't mean to ignore everybody in the chat, because you guys have got a lot of great comments here. Let's see. Joni said, I lived in Central America and volunteered in a store to learn Espanol. I saw the daily with the indigenous Nagobi bugles of Chirac-Quay, right? So that's interesting, and there's so much going on, and that's awesome. That's all really outstanding to be able to go down immersive. When you immerse yourself in the language, immerse yourself in a culture, you learn so much, versus, again, another sidetrack, versus just going on as a tourist. If you go to Mexico, for instance, and you go to the touristy areas, you never actually see Mexico. When you go down and work in Mexico, you begin to see Mexico, and when I was down there working with some customers down in that area, I saw Mexico, and it's really outstanding, and it was the first time I was down there. I'd never gone to any of the vacation resorts. I never wanted to go to a vacation resort. I was like, when I travel, I always want to go, where I'm going to be immersed into the culture like that, but like what Joni's talking about, it's so important to understand these cultures, from within. Even when I was over, I'd go to conferences over in Germany, and I'll tell the guys that were traveling with me, I said, look, we're not going to take taxis when we go to work or whatever. We're going to go and we're taking trains, and we're going to get to know, how things work in the area. Did that pretty much everywhere except for India. Didn't take the trains, but we actually drove around, or had people drive us around when we were in India, but saw some very interesting places when you're actually down and working in these areas. Another sidetrack. So let's get back to here we go. This goes back just to what we were talking about before. I'm sorry I skipped over some of these things, but helps the unbanked for sure. Also helps those in heavily banked countries by offering free market money outside of the banks, i.e. Celsius. Exactly. So great comment, Mike. Appreciate that comment. That's really good. Let's see. Here we go. Here's another one. Thank God for small business owners in Panama. As a large corporation, grocery stores don't do this. So yeah, it's interesting. We got to look and really try to support the local. Try to support those local stores. We're starting to see a little bit of a change. I guess that's where our chat kind of ended here. You guys were talking amongst yourselves. Here's something you brought up when you're talking to Dan. The government keeps them down and silent. The indigenous have no identification. They can't leave their country. They're not part of the this. I mean, this what Joni's bringing up, kind of brings us. I'm glad you brought this up, but it's interesting. I don't mean to again sidetrack the conversation. I might be chasing people away as I sidetrack this, and we haven't even talked about the Fed yet. But this stuff is so much more important, so much more critical than the Fed. And this really gets to the heart of. Oh wow, Joni, thank you very much for that. Appreciate that super sticker. That's awesome. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Let me throw that up here. Boom! Look at that. $9.99 support. Appreciate it. But I want to get back over to what you said here, because and this kind of borders a little bit in the political sphere, and I don't want to really dwell there too much, but this part has to be said because of what's going on right now in the U.S. and we see it in other parts. There are countries that have real problems. I'm not saying that some of the issues that we're facing in the U.S. aren't real or drastic or whatever, but when I talk about real problems, I'm talking about like what Joni just brought up, and it's tragic. I'm talking about tragic issues to a proportion that go completely unnoticed. And not to undermine any of the issues that are going on in the U.S. right now, but this point is unreal, because You know, you have countries, Mexico, uh, you, probably, in a lot of the South American countries, but Mexico could be singled out. The indigenous in that region, there's groups, different segments of Indians, or whatever, different populations, throughout South America, that don't have the rights of the rest of the people in the country at all. Nothing, zero. And I saw it in Mexico, and I remember seeing a lot of these people on the streets, women, their kids, and they didn't seem to be they seemed a little bit out of society. And one of the guys I was working with down there, I'm like, I'm trying to understand the fabric and functionality of what's going on in Mexico City. And he was explaining to me the issue, that they don't even really participate, and they're outsiders, and the Mexican government doesn't care about them, and really has diminished them and has pushed them into poverty. And we're talking about now, not before, like right now. And what Joni's bringing up, individuals in these countries, no identification, no real citizenship. They can't leave the country. They're stuck in the country. They're limited in what they have access to. Uh, it's amazing to me. You know, it, it, it kills me, because this happens all over the world. You're seeing it. You're seeing what's going on over in China. What China does to their Muslim populations, and the reason why to bring this stuff up, and why it's so critical, is because blockchain and the digital asset space is giving all people opportunity. So if you have individuals in these communities that are being subjugated by the government, what better way to fight back than to have opportunities, to bank themselves, to have opportunities to better themselves, to try to function in a way, to be innovative. And it's amazing. It amazes me that people don't understand it. I see so much naivete on YouTube. I see so much naivete in general in public. I see so much naivete in politics. People that have never traveled, never, not once, never left the U.S. And when they do travel, they go to resorts. Or these politicians, when they travel, they end up, they're just going on these missions, and they speak, and the stuff that comes out of their mouth is unbelievable, and they just have no clue. Stuff that's been happening down in the Sudan, and real slave trade that happens in the Sudan, from the Middle East, that's going on today, and no one's talking about it, not at all. Just completely undermined. I can remember, going to a meeting with an individual that had escaped. He was Sudanese, and he had escaped. I forget what country he was in, but it took an interesting path, as he had to try to escape to get to Egypt, then to Europe, then to the United States. And we're talking about maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago. And he had been captured. His family's, the village he was in the Sudan was destroyed. And basically, he's taken when he was a small child. And here he is speaking up in front of the United Nations. So maybe 15 years ago at this point. And it was almost like it fell on deaf ears. I can remember in the lecture, he's up speaking about his experiences and everything that was going on, and trying to bring awareness to what was happening. And people looked at him like, whatever. And to me, that was gut wrenching. I can remember, there he is telling his real story of survival, and people were critiquing him. I don't even want to get into that part of the conversation, but it was amazing to me. And I've traveled, I've been to places, and I look around and I say, you know what? There's so much opportunity in this world. People at the end of the day are pretty much the same. I've had some really amazing life lessons doing business in different parts of the world. One person, we were working at a conference, and I had people coming over to me from at that point from Iran and Saudi Arabia and throughout the Arab world, and the one group I was working with at the time, they were from Israel, and so they built a device, and so people from all over the Arab world kept coming over, and I said this is interesting because they knew 100% that this technology was developed in Israel, and this company was an Israeli company. And here you have people again from all over the Arab world. And this wasn't the first time I had conversation. I've worked with people throughout the Middle East, but it was interesting, to hear what they said. They said, "Look, we understand. We know your product is made in Israel. We know it's an Israeli company, but that's not what matters. What matters here isn't how the governments respond to each other. What matters is how the people respond to each other." That was like, I had multiple conversations like that over the years with people, and that's what the reality is. It's not how the governments are going to do what governments do. The people are going to do what people do, and it's this level, it's the individual level, it's the people that are going to make a difference. And why is all this so important in blockchain? Why is it all so important in cryptocurrency? It's because when you have an opportunity to help other individuals rise up, not from the government level, forget the government handouts and all the government nonsense and the control and the brainwashing and the manipulations and all of that globally. Forget about what their power plays are. It's a different world. It's a world that we don't live in. We don't want to live in necessarily in that tension. Big shout out to CNN, to Crypto News Nation News. What's up? Good to see you here. If you guys haven't seen, go check out Crypto Nation News. I'm not sure if you've had any good videos lately, but Malpass, James Malpass of Crypto Nation News. Thank you for that. But man, there's just so much going on, and it's so critical that we as a people, are able to move things in a certain direction, not in a reverse direction, not in the chess match that's going on between nations. That's a different conversation on a different channel. We can get into the politics of it in depth, but Joni brings it up again, peer to peer, people to people. That's how things grow. That's why Uber became uber successful. That's why Airbnb became successful. Because it's giving people an opportunity to actually earn wealth. It's giving people an opportunity to become self-reliant. Forget about what the Federal Reserve is going to do. Forget about what all of these people are going to do. It comes down to the peer-to-peer. It comes down to the people. Is all that stuff important up here? It is. We don't necessarily have full control over it unless you want to organize a massive lobby organization. But there are those that are building in this space right now. And I'm sure there's people out there. I'm shocked we only have 30 people watching this morning, but it is early. Getting the message out there. But I'm sure that there's people that are watching that are builders, that can develop, that are going to do something. We can be investors, and we can be silent investors in hopes that things develop in the right direction, which eventually they will. And we're seeing it. It's like being an early investor in high tech. There's the builders that are going to keep, and we're just along for the ride, and that's awesome. But I'm sure there's people out here that are builders, regardless of what part of the world you're in, that are actually going to be developing technology to bring us that much further. And maybe you're sitting on an idea. Now's the time to implement that idea. Now's the time to try to figure out, can I be a player in this blockchain space? Can I be a player in this this new digital asset renaissance? Because the titans of tomorrow are going to be completely different than the titans of yesterday. as per Alex Mashinsky, who has made his billions and brings 8 startups from his experience in developing Celsius, which is a game changer technology in the space in terms of allowing people to earn interest and how they function. And we're going to see others that are going to be equally competitive to that technology of what they do, and they're out there. There are others that are doing it, and it's important. Which brings us back to now I've ranted for like 50 minutes and lost our focus on why was the Federal Reserve and the banks so important to what we're going to even talk about. But let's get into the banks because this is where, okay, we take that self peer-to-peer, we do all this stuff is important, but then we're still functioning within the community. So banks, well, first and foremost, there was an article that came out July 21st that said Ethereum flippins Bitcoin to become the most used blockchain. That's been developing over time. We're seeing a ton of things. We see a lot of stablecoin use. We see DeFi. And then, between those two, we see a lot that's been built on Ethereum. Regardless what you want to think about Ethereum, doesn't matter. The fact is a fact that more and more and more and more projects have been developed on Ethereum, and it's really, pushed it to a forefront. But on the banking side, what's important on the banking side from the U.S. perspective, and this comes from OCC, which is the Office of the Comptroller of Currency. This is important. This is a government level thing that we don't have control over. However, as we as a community keep pushing in a certain direction, things happen. So here you have the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, OCC, is letting all nationally chartered banks in the U.S. provide custody services for cryptocurrency. Why is that important? Why is it that we've been waiting for some clarity, some regulation, some normalcy from a mainstream perspective? We need security. So Coinbase offers security, but mainstream Uphold can offer security. Celsius as an investment spot can offer security, but from a mainstream perspective, what is mainstream America, mainstream world? Where do they put their money? In banks. So if mainstream world, mainstream America puts their money in banks, then where are they going to turn when they say, I want to be able to custody, I want somewhere that's going to custody my crypto investment, my digital asset investment, as a starting point, So I think that part's important. It's important that they made this statement. Whether it happens is going to be interesting, but it opens up some really interesting corridors because now imagine, Coinbase becomes a bank. Uphold becomes a bank. What is it going to actually do? I think it's more, it's an interesting, marketing, interesting, concept that it's allowing these banks to custody. It's important for mainstream adoption. Again, whether they do it or whether we see Coinbase continue to do it is going to be interesting. So let's see. I want to say what's up to Sirdan. Glad to see you here. Also, Annalise, you popped in while I was ranting. So, Joni's just throwing up all sorts of good comments today. So, we ask clients of banks, trust our local banks to hold our critters. I hope they follow the Celsius model. Yeah, so, we definitely want to see, some development. Mike, also great to see you, posting here. But thoughts on how banks holding crypto changes the use case for Bitcoin. I just can't see banks moving Bitcoin on the chain, See that chip on the chain, and paying the high fees. Yeah, I think again, what Visa? Yeah, I think Visa is interesting because Visa announced that they're going to offer payment, and the focus is on 3 primary currencies and maybe more: Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP. So I think that part is important when we start seeing, Visa getting into it. Um, holding Bitcoin, are there going to be fees? There's fees now in banking. So if if they're going to custody the crypto, there's going to be fees. Fees are going to be fees, and they're going to charge them back to the people. The question is whether or not you want to custody, or is it going to be larger institutions like JP Morgan is going to custody for larger institutions? So are they competing against, let's say, a BitGo or something along those lines, where you're custodying, securing? They changes the dynamics of banking. Banks understand the direction that we're moving in right now. I believe, banks move super slow. Banks don't make overnight decisions. Governments don't make overnight decisions. The US government doesn't make overnight decisions. This regulatory discussion on crypto is slow moving, and it's going to keep slowly moving, but things are going to happen. Same thing with banks. They don't just switch. So is it important that they're getting into the custodial space? Yes. Does that mean that we're going to, the ebb and flow of the cryptos in and out of these banks? Where are the fees going to go? They're going to go back to the people, unless they're going to absorb them, depending on the actual fees and the cost. It's going to be interesting. So this is where, James brings up, if they don't figure out fees, we'll see more and more of these projects. Oh, that was from an Ethereum perspective. Yeah, I think, so we'll start seeing some transition there. But going back, on the banking, it's amazing. I love these comments, keep them coming, but cryptocurrency is no longer a speculation. It isn't, and this is where, we're starting to see, some movement. Why are the banks, getting involved in this? Because they also see the end. They see what's happening. The banks don't want to be left out of it. And if the banks sit back and say, look, no, we're not getting involved, but this OCC decision is definitely a necessary step forward. And as Dansky is also talking about, it could be an important decision for them on the CBDC side. As we've seen, some regulatory changes over like in China to make way for their digital asset. They're changing some of their terminology over there as well, to accommodate digital currency, maybe not crypto, maybe not Bitcoin, etc. But a lot of these are trying to make way for their own digital currency because it doesn't exist in their laws, as we are looking at right now. And there was a court case that was just ruled that Bitcoin in the U.S., that Bitcoin should be treated as a currency. Another step forward. It's not an end all be all. Another step forward. More Bitcoins move across XRP than any other place. Lower fees and speed. So, transactions. Here I'll be running across the U.S. to promote a data ownership protocol in September. Running. Yeah, that's awesome. If you're going to be running, that's fantastic. I don't know what that means, but if you're actually going to do a U.S. run, that's going to be really cool. So keep us posted on that CMD line prompt here, command line prompt. If you are running across the U.S., let us know about that. That would be awesome. That would be outstanding. So let's see here. Man, we're getting all sorts of people bouncing in that either we haven't seen in a while or brand new. So, I like how, Joni's saying, I hope banks follow the Celsius model. They're paying back a lot. WB over here, banks, competitors like PayPal. So this is amazing. This is why is it so important what's happening at the Fed level? Why is it so important what's happening at the banking level? And I can't believe I ranted on other stuff for like 30, 40 minutes. I thought that was important, but this supposed to be the topic, every best laid plan. So it's so key. They've been waiting. They're doing their thing. Is the digital asset space going to develop? Are cryptos going to develop? Is mainstream important? What exactly is going to happen? So here we have, banks, PayPal, others, the governments. They're all getting into this digital currency space. PayPal is a big, that was expected. PayPal kind of has dominated, was an initiator in the online payment space. They couldn't hold back. They have to get involved in this. Otherwise they're going to be a has-been. Look at eBay. Is eBay the go-to place for buying today? eBay used to be, the end-all be-all. Everyone's like, oh, eBay. I used to run an eBay store, and it was interesting, and the stuff that we sold on this eBay store was unbelievable. And but now think about it. How many people actually go? I don't know the last time I went to eBay was probably like a year ago. I went on to eBay to go buy something. But Amazon is like the go-to for everybody. So eBay, it's not a complete has-been, but it's almost a has-been. Just like PayPal, you have Zelle for in the U.S. You have others around the world. Soon you're going to have these the crypto payment rails that are going to be active everywhere. And so you're going to need apps that are going to use these payment rails within the peer-to-peer side of it. And you need cost-effective. We don't want a Visa that's going to create the payment rails and then charge their typical 2.9% transaction cost, which they might do. It's still this it's this mega organization that needs to collect its fees. So here is where the building becomes important. The building in the space becomes important because we need to really take advantage of the whole purpose of crypto and blockchain. All that is to reduce costs, reduce the need for this this support network that these big conglomerates bring. You don't necessarily need all of these moving pieces. You just have a moving piece. You don't have lots of moving pieces. And so I think that's going to be important. CNN here, how much money will move across ILP? All the money, meaning Bitcoin, digital assets, traditional stocks, banking, everything. The rails through the ILP are critical. I like that statement. Really important. Here we go. Following to my earlier comment, banks custody assets so they can use them and make money off them. There you go. It'll be too expensive, slow, and risky. China centralization for banks to move to BDC. I agree with that. There's some issue, when it comes to Bitcoin from a centralization perspective, especially if people try to use it from a payment perspective. It's going to be interesting because at the end of the day, what's going to be needed. Again, a lot of this is an identifier for Main Street. The mainstream America, Main Street world, Main Street Europe, Main Street Asia, whatever it is. In order to get into the digital asset space, we need some normalcy in terms of what people are normally used to hearing. Banks. So again, that does that mean that Coinbase is going to become a bank? Does that mean that some of these exchanges will become banks? My opinion, I believe that they're on the verge of becoming big. They're basically crypto banks. So if you're putting your crypto there, they're a crypto bank. I don't care what, how we call it. If you're not keeping your digital asset offline in a ledger, you're keeping it on an exchange, that's your bank. That's where you put your stuff. They're the ones holding it and protecting it and securing it. It just has a different name. So, okay, let's just sidestep a little bit back to the Federal Reserve, and then we can maybe wrap up with a conversation on the Fed and why is the Federal Reserve, why is there so much discussion here and some chaos going over Judy Shelton, who was approved to be a board member, on the Fed, but Judy Shelton, and if you guys don't, hang on a second. Let's share the screen. Let's get a tab. Where's the Wikipedia? Here we go. Okay, so who is Judy Shelton? Here she is. And why are there outspoken people in government that are against what she stands for? And it's interesting because she's been a lifelong, at least involved, for a long time. I would say lifelong, but let's call it since 2012. She joined the Gold Standard Now organization. She's big into the gold standard. She's also come out in support of cryptocurrency. She has an interesting, political background, but she was at the Hoover Institute, for 10 years. She was worked with Bob Dole. She worked with Ben Carson on his presidential campaign. Then she was on the Trump campaign. She's done a ton of stuff in this space, and she's really been very actively involved. And here's some of her statements: is that she believed that the Federal Reserve is almost a rogue agency in some of the things that they're doing. She wants a 0% inflation target, whereas the banks are at 2%. She's highly skeptical, of the Federal Reserve's dual mandate, price stability, etc. She's just been a big critique of the Fed, and now to sit on the board of the Fed, can really, have an impact. So let me hang on a second. Let me pull this one off, and let me share one other one here. And this is interesting. So you can look at kind of the who's who of her life. What is kind of important about that. But here's an article. Hang on, let me pull this article up. I think it's interesting. Hang on, let's get the tab here. This is she wrote for the Cato Institute. Where is it? Here we go. No, oh, here it is. Okay, there's the tab. So she wrote for the Cato Institute. This was 2018. The case for a new international monetary system. She lays out the case for it. What's been going on up to this point. What are some of the issues? Why some of the changes? What exactly? Why should there be some adjustments in the rules of what's happening? And so look at this. We have not had a rules-based international monetary system since Nixon ended the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1971. We come off the gold standard. What is it going to look like as we move forward? For future prosperity, what's going to be needed? Going back to what Alex Mashinsky had said, the titans of tomorrow won't necessarily be the titans of today or yesterday, because there's a lot happening in the space. Yet those same titans, they're going to still be wealthy, but yet they're still going to try to manipulate, potentially take advantage of, I want to say manipulate, but take advantage of this new structure that's popping up. Banks custody and digital asset. They want to stay in the know, in the game. PayPal wants to stay in the game. So it kind of becomes interesting. So the free-for-all approach to determining exchange rate is sometimes promoted as free market. There's so much going on. Look at this. However, if exchange rates are truly determined by market force alone, not subject to government intervention or manipulation, why are governments allowed to build up massive foreign currency reserves? Right, because they're trying to manipulate currencies. We've seen currency rate adjustments and manipulations. We saw it often over in China. I keep saying about China because it's a great example of what has happened. So it's interesting, because this is her writings, but this is the person that they're nominating that's going to sit on the Federal Reserve Board. So you have the currency disorder that reigns today is anathema to any notion of free and fair. Right? Nations can blatantly target the exchange rate they desire, whatever their strategic objectives might be. There's a lot going on around the world. So what does this have to do with blockchain? What does this have to do with, digital asset? Obviously a lot, because of the foundation and the idea behind it, decentralized with a sprinkling of control being the sprinkling of control is the regulation. You have to have laws. We don't operate in anarchy, but at the same point, we have to find this way to prevent currency manipulation, overprinting, so many different ideas of what's happened needs to change as we go forward. So it's important. It's really, really important. Preemptive international monetary reform, something that she talked about. So whether she's the right person for this job, who knows? We're not the ones who decide it, but bringing up some really interesting, important points in this article that she wrote. Really talking about what needs to happen, what should happen, what's been happening. Uh, you know, it's important. We have to look at that. We have to look at the next superpowers of the world. What kind of manipulation and centralized control are they going to have? How do we bring the power back to the people? How do we create more fair free trade without one country benefiting over another, where things are more balanced, where things are going to benefit both sides? So, for instance, in the latest USMCA with Mexico and Canada, uh, a real positive step forward for not just the U.S., not just Canada, not just Mexico, but all three. Mexico is going to benefit significantly from the USMCA, being that more and more factories will be able to be built in Mexico to benefit the economy. Is it necessarily because labor is cheaper, or is it also because setting up the factories are going to have incentives, in Mexico, versus some of the regulatory hurdles in different areas of the U.S. Because of political issues that will prevent it. Now, in Mexico, one of the key points in developing the factories in the USMCA was also setting a standard expectation of salary, meaning that people working in the factory should be paid at least $12 an hour. For Mexico, that's massive. To have an income potential of $12 an hour in a place where they don't have that, it's probably half that or less than half that, or a fourth of that. That's really important. That also helps level things out a little bit. People aren't going to just flee to Mexico to take advantage, but you need to have mutual benefit. If we're going to build factories there, we need to make sure that we're enriching the people that are working there. We're helping bring them into into life, and it keeps people that are in Mexico, that are fleeing, that are trying to leave because they have no opportunities, and the government doesn't want to help them either. So the government wants to help push them into another country to rely on on money coming back from these foreign workers. That economy needs to go away. We can't have a country that is relying on a big part of their gross domestic product. The big part of their GDP is foreign workers, and we've seen that example. We talked last time. We talked about a part of India that relied on that whole part of India relied on foreign workers, and those foreign workers went over as in the service industry, hotels, restaurants, and then over the years they moved from service to they're college educated. Then they moved up to more white collar type work. They went from service into maybe industry, into actually working in finance and banking and high tech and whatever it was. Their salaries rose up as they moved up their ranks, so to speak. More and more wealth was being brought back to this one region of India. That was their economy. Now they're seeing the hole in that economy because the past 5 months that economy came crashing down on them, and they realize they have nothing. And so it's been tragic for them. So when you work out these types of agreements, as we're going to have like with Mexico, and why, what is this all these things like kind of overlap with one another. And this whole point of, who this person is and what some of her thought processes are, with a gold standard. Why is it important to back up the strength of your currency and not just allow it to be printed into obscurity? Even here, look, citing the organization, this is a mandate for economic and financial stability. This was something that came from Christine Lagarde, who DNI talks about a lot, from the IMF. Important, so look at this, a strong role. Recently, so Christine Lagarde said that the IMF take a strong role in overseeing the advent of virtual currencies. and also move toward creating a digital version of the SDR. DNI, if you're out there, you talked a lot about the ESDR. So here's the digital version of the SDR. I'm running way over an hour here. We like keeping these to an hour. I ran for 40 minutes. I need to stay on topic. If you guys see that, just zap me or something if I get sidetracked. Hey, you didn't come here to talk about this stuff. We came here to listen to you talk about the Fed. So it's interesting. You see, some ideas that are coming out from the IMF. You see ideas coming out from Judy Shelton. A lot of this has to do with normalizing, creating a balance in the financial space, in the world economy, establishing monetary policy from a global perspective that can't be completely manipulated. Whoa, CNN, what's up, man? Thank you for that. That's huge, man. Really appreciate that. Let me see if I can throw that up here. See if it's come here yet. Boom. There you go. Let me throw that up here. I don't know if you guys can even see this screen print. Even if I'm looking at my shared screen, I can't see it on my phone, but I'm scrolling through it anyways. So appreciate that, James. That's huge. Huge. So here we have, and this is interesting, right? Because now when we see, what's going to be the monetary policy at a global level that is going to challenge, and so now she's thinking about challenging the U.S. dollar, undermining the U.S. sovereign power and influence in global financial markets. One thing that we don't have yet that we need to have is we need to have an understanding and better control over how the evolving fintech and evolving cryptocurrency. We need some regulatory clarity. Here's someone that's fighting for regulatory clarity to understand why is it significant, for us to why is it significant for us, even from a U.S. perspective, to maintain a leadership position in the world as it comes to the financial markets, even as it comes to the politics of it. What has the U.S. served, over the past 100 years globally? How have we changed the world for the better? Not without error. Obviously, everybody makes mistakes, but taking on multiple regimes that have been detrimental to the world, and so that's important to understand and note, and nobody can really dispute that fact. Everybody's going to make a mistake. Countries make mistakes as you have presidents change every 4 to 8 years with different ideas, and their policies take a little while to kind of kick in. But I wanted another shout out here. Hang on a second. How did this one come in? Look at this. Boom, another one from James, and that one's from Serdan. So I appreciate that, man. You just throwing them up there, boom, back to back, and then boom, there's another one. Appreciate that, man. Carl Lewis, your James, your avatar reminds him of Spider-Man for some reason. That's funny. So, man, that's awesome. Now you've done some amazing things, James. I appreciate you a lot. Annalise. Here we got Tim Thornton just popped in here. And we got a lot of great comments in here. So your last message, what did he say? How did I miss Sir Down? Here he is. You'll give me your Zum. Zum wallets. If you guys aren't familiar with the Zum wallet, go check that out. That's building in the space. So where are we here? So here we go. All right. So now this one, look, and we're gonna wrap up here in a minute, or a few minutes. It's gonna take a little more time. I gotta squeeze out a little bit more time. I didn't want to go over the hour mark. That's what happens when I started ranting. I'm dabbling way too close to the whole DNI time frame here. But all right, if the appeal of cryptocurrencies is their capacity to provide a common currency and to maintain a uniform value for every issued unit, we need only consult historical experience to ascertain that these same qualities were achieved through the classical international gold standard without sacrificing the sovereignty of international nations. I mean, look at this. Let me see if I can grab this. Look at this statement. I'm going to put a comment in here. Let me see if I can do this. Hang on a second. Let me put this in here. I don't know if you guys can see it. To me, this is like no, oh, that's okay. There we go. Let me show this. Let me unshow. Oh no, it's not going to share the whole thing. All right, never mind. All right, let me hide that. Oops. Anyhow, so that's a statement. You guys can't. I don't know if you guys can read it or see it or whatever. But if the appeal of cryptocurrencies is their capacity to provide a common currency and to maintain a uniform value for every issued unit, we need only consult historical experience to ascertain that these same qualities were achieved through the classical international gold standard without sacrificing the sovereignty of individual nations. Then she said, to the contrary, gold standard rules permit nations to participate voluntarily by operating in accordance with the discipline of gold convertibility of their own currencies. So it's interesting because it's a major statement. Now here, a modern version, right? The modern version of the gold standard. And this is so crazy because when I first got into this, I had actually written up this whole idea of currencies of the cryptocurrency market replacing the gold standard. It's amazing, and I don't think I ever played it. I don't think I ever fully made that video. I wrote it out. Never really fully got into it. That the crypto space could potentially be the gold standard, of our generation. And it's interesting because a modern version of this approach, one that permits the issuance of virtual currencies in tandem with government issued currencies, adapting legal tender laws to permit healthy currency competition, should be put forward. So if you've ever had an individual going into the Fed that has, that really has, a good head on her shoulders, that really has the people at heart, making sure that we see some regulatory norms, not just in the US, not just in Europe, not just in wherever, whatever country we're talking about, from a global currency standard to go back to a gold standard type situation where now cryptocurrencies could actually serve the same purpose as it would be a modern day gold standard. Could you put them in balance with one another? Interesting. You put everything in balance. And so that's what needs to be achieved. Now, why is she such an outlier in the Fed system? Because the Fed system is in control of, they're the titans of today or the titans of yesterday. So now as we move into this space, which organization then becomes the titan of tomorrow if we start to see a gold standard crypto, a gold standard based on a digital asset, a gold standard digital asset currency that's helping to create a norm within the international monetary system? Interesting. Really, really interesting. So what happens next? Now, as we're in this phase, kind of, a war, so to speak, from all levels, and we've been at it for about 5 months. We're seeing an economic war. We're seeing a viral war from a health standard. We're seeing the political wars waged on multiple fronts. We're seeing the war of freedom being waged in different parts of the world as we speak. All of these things are coalescing at this exact moment. And the one thing that we know that is a common theme across all of them is going to be economics, right? Put people in a good economic position allows us to overcome a lot, allows us to work together. If we put ourselves in this strong economic position of that peer-to-peer environment, of this decentralized kind of environment, allowing people, all around the world to have an opportunity to develop, an opportunity to grow financially, it changes the whole conversation. So there you go. That is my rant on this. WB, keep in mind that Alan Greenspan was a gold bug before he went into the Fed. Judy Shelton's actions in the Fed may not match her views now. As she sits on the board, that's true, could be. However, we see this momentum building. I think the difference between an Alan Greenspan and where Judy is coming in at this point is that you have the momentum behind it. It's a different world right now. Just like I think we have an opportunity as we push someone like Judy into the Fed to change it. We also have an opportunity to change the dynamics on the ground from a taxation perspective and even adjust the way taxes are collected from individuals. Easier to do through a blockchain type environment, breaking down the IRS, because you don't need the fat within the IRS to oversee collection of taxes as it's done through blockchain. But at the same time, creating more of a fair tax or a flat tax, taking away the income tax model and going more in the direction of a consumption tax could be very, very instrumental to economic growth in the United States because people are held back significantly by overtaxation through the corporate taxation, everything else, but giving everybody an opportunity to inject money. Imagine if you didn't lose 30 or 35% of your paycheck. Imagine what that money could do to the economy if you pull back on the income tax. So critical. It's so critical. But if you pull back on income tax, you still need to collect that tax. So going to a model of this fair tax or flat tax or whatever, but it becomes a consumption tax, and it's easily traceable and trackable at this point through blockchain. As we move into a digital currency model, it facilitates everything. If Bitcoin then becomes the store of value that is the backbone of this gold standard, but it can't be one currency. And that was another part of my point. I need to go back and rehash my notes and bring this out, because also goes to what DNI has talked a lot about with this IMF ESDR with its basket of currencies. But the IMF plays a slightly different role, in terms of what it does. But in the US, for instance, if we're to help establish this global international standard, does the IMF then become the player that helps identify what this standard is? Is there going to be another Bretton Woods? So let's say you have a basket of digital assets. Maybe you have gold injected in there as well. Then you have digital assets injected in. It becomes a basket of currencies similar to what the SDR is with its 5 currencies. It becomes its own value, based on all the different aspects of the membership and the amount of money, whatever, they come up with their value. But this basket of currencies to create a standard, and it would be a modern day gold standard: Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, whatever you want to throw in there, XLM, you want to throw in there, VeChain, you want to throw in there whatever these major currencies are at this point. Throw them into that basket. Now you don't have the centralized control either, because same idea kind of behind the SDR, where you have the Chinese yuan, you have the US dollar, you have the euro, you have the pound sterling, you have the Japanese yen, and you create this basket. Now, no one country, in theory, should be able to impact the valuation of the SDR, as DNI, has referenced the ESDR. But again, the IMF isn't necessarily an impartial. It's not necessarily an impartial third party either. It has its own agendas, and its agendas are also somewhat dictated by global politics. So if we have anyhow, so that's kind of the importance of that direction to create that gold standard. I think it's important. I kind of like the direction that this is going in. True, she may have the president supporting changes. I think we see a lot going on. There's so much that we don't know what's going on. What you see on the media is definitely not real. from a perspective of all the negotiations and the arguments and the BS and the soap opera and all this nonsense that we see on the media. By the time it hits the media, there's so much other things going on behind the scenes. If we just focus in the U.S. politics, you have the Republicans and the Democrats and Congress and Senate, and all these people live together, work together, see each other every day. A lot of lifelongers in there that have been there and built their careers in politics for some unknown reason other than their own monetary enrichment. But the fact that these people work together every single day, go out to lunch together, go to the same parties together, it's complete BS that, a lot of this conflict and tension between them. They come out, they bash each other, and then all of a sudden they're at lunch together, or they're at the same party, and it's not public, and it's just crazy. But anyhow, current Bitcoin can survive because it moves on the XRPL and not the Lightning Network. People are building upon Bitcoin for different apps. Bitcoin is alive and as strong as ever. Interesting. So where are we? So if there was a primary emission of money, it would be different, but money is debt, ask for complete regulation and centralization in the long run. Good comments here. Well, I kind of missed some stuff. Here we go. James, great insights and thoughts. Thank you, sir. Politics, poly means many. Ticks means bloodsuckers. That's hilarious. You put the two together, and what do you get? Home church over in Panama, or you're in Florida. But my opinion, future contracts are the reason we see so much manipulation. Without futures contracts, the price of digital assets would be astronomical. Interesting, which goes back to a conversation we had last week that had to do with David Schwartz and his ideas. So anyhow, this was awesome. Appreciate all of you guys. You guys are amazing. It's amazing to see some of our new people that are on here. Hopefully we'll see you guys again tomorrow night. Check it out. Tomorrow night is our roundtable discussion, 8 p.m. Right here on the chain, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Both Chip and I will be on the roundtable. We have a special guest with us, and we will be putting that out. You'll see that go out tomorrow when we throw that out. So that is, I think it's what, Coining 203, I believe is his Twitter. So anyhow, but he'll be on with us tomorrow. Awesome. Thank you all. That big shout out to anyone who supported us. Joni, James, Sir Don. We got some major support that flew through here today. Appreciate all of you guys. You guys are amazing, and we'll see you guys tomorrow night. Let me see if I can take us out of here. Where's our thing? I can't find it. Where's the exit? It's not in my. Here it is.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.